The Dream Merchant of the Night Bazaar. A sleep story for deep rest introduction. Close your eyes now and let yourself settle into this moment. You don't need to do anything, just listen. Tonight, we journey together to a place where sleep is not something you chase, but something that finds you. A place where dreams are kept in bottles and rest comes wrapped in silk and starlight. This is the story of Samir, a man much like you, who forgot how to sleep, and the merchant who reminded him, let your breathing slow, let your body grow heavy, and let us begin. Chapter 1. The Sleepless Nights. Samir lived in a city of pale stone and narrow streets, a city where the sun turned walls to honey in the afternoon, and where night fell suddenly, like a curtain dropped from the sky. It was an old city, a city of arches and courtyards, where fountains whispered to themselves in the dark. His house was small, just 3 rooms that opened onto a central garden, where a single lemon tree grew, its branches reaching toward a square of sky. The walls were thick, cool even in summer, and the floors were covered in worn rugs that had belonged to his grandmother. It was a quiet house, a peaceful house, but Samir could not sleep. Night after night, he would lie in his bed, staring at the ceiling. The room was dark, the air was still. Outside, the city rested, but his mind would not. He would think about the day that had passed, the words he had said, the words he hadn't. He would think about tomorrow, about all the tomorrows stretching ahead of him like an endless road. And the more he thought, the more awake he became. Sometimes he would rise and go to the window. He would look out at the rooftops, at the dome of the old mosque catching moonlight, at the stars scattered like salt across the velvet sky, and he would feel so tired, so very tired. But sleep would not come. He tried everything. He tried warm milk with honey. He tried counting his breaths. He tried lying perfectly still, as though he could trick his body into rest. He tried reading until his eyes burned. He tried nothing at all, just waiting in the dark, hoping that exhaustion would finally pull him under. But the hours would pass, one after another, measured by the distant call to prayer before dawn. And when morning came, he would rise feeling hollowed out, as though something essential had been scraped away in the night. His friends noticed. "You look tired," they would say, and he would smile and nod and say, "I'm fine. Just a little trouble sleeping." But it wasn't a little trouble. It was a weight he carried everywhere, a fog that never lifted. The world felt slightly unreal to him now, as though he were watching it through glass. One evening, as the sun was setting, he walked through the old quarter of the city. The streets were narrow here, twisting like a maze. Laundry hung between the buildings. The smell of cumin and frying onions drifted from open windows. He passed an old man sitting on a step. The man was watching the street with calm, patient eyes. As Samir walked by, the old man spoke. "You don't sleep." Samir stopped. It wasn't a question. "No," he said quietly. "I don't." The old man nodded slowly, as though this was something he already knew. He was silent for a moment, and then he said, "There is a place for people like you, a place that opens only at night. They call it the Night Bazaar." Samir frowned. "I've never heard of it." "Most haven't." The old man's voice was soft, almost a whisper. "It isn't for everyone, only for those who need it, those who come to it, the first time, in the dark." "Where is it?" The old man gestured vaguely toward the east, where the old city walls still stood. "You'll know it when you see it. A light that doesn't belong, a sound that calls to you. If you need it, It will find you." Samir wanted to ask more, but the old man had closed his eyes as though the conversation was over. Samir stood there for a moment, then continued on his way. That night he lay in bed as usual. The hours crawled past. Midnight, 1, 2. The house was silent. The city was silent. But his mind churned and turned, restless as the sea. And then he heard it. A sound, distant, faint, like music, but not quite, like voices but softer. It seemed to drift through his window on the night air, calling to him. Samir sat up. He went to the window and looked out. The street below was empty. The rooftops were silver with moonlight. But to the east, toward the old walls, there was a glow. Not bright, just a soft luminescence, like foxfire in a forest. He stood there, listening, and the sound came again, a murmur, a hum, the faint chime of bells. Without thinking, he dressed. He pulled on his sandals and a light robe, and he stepped out into the night. Chapter 2. The road to the night bazaar. The streets were empty. Samir walked slowly, his footsteps soft on the worn stones. The city at night was different, familiar but strange. The buildings seemed taller, the shadows deeper. The moon hung low and full, turning everything to shades of blue and silver. He moved through the narrow alleys he had known all his life, but they felt different now, as though he were walking through a memory of the city rather than the city itself. No one else was out, no voices, no movement, just the quiet sound of his own breathing, and that distant glow ahead, always ahead, drawing him forward. He passed the old fountain in the square. Water trickled from the mouth of a stone lion, filling the basin below with a soft, continuous whisper. Samir paused and dipped his hand in the cool water. It felt real, solid. He was awake. This was not a dream, and yet it felt like one. He continued on. The streets began to slope downward toward the eastern edge of the city, where the old walls still stood. These walls had been built centuries ago, when the city needed defending. Now they were just a part of the landscape, covered in vines, crumbling in places, with arched gateways that led to the roads beyond. Samir walked toward one of these gateways. The glow was stronger now, and the sound, he could hear it more clearly. Voices, laughter, the soft jangle of bells and bangles, the murmur of a crowd. He stepped through the arch, and there it was, the night bazaar. It stretched before him like something out of a tale his grandmother used to tell. A market, but unlike any market he had ever seen. Stalls and tents lined a broad avenue, their canopies made of silk and cotton in deep jewel tones. Midnight blue, plum, emerald, burnt orange. Lanterns hung everywhere, glowing with a soft, warm light that seemed to come from within the glass itself rather than from any flame. The air smelled of incense and spices, cardamom, cinnamon, rose, sandalwood. It was warm, but not hot, gentle, like a breath held close. People moved between the stalls, but they moved slowly. There was no hurry here, no shouting, no haggling, just quiet voices and soft laughter. Everyone seemed calm, at ease, as though time had slowed down and there was no reason to rush. Samir stood at the edge of the bazaar, taking it all in. A merchant nearby was selling fabric, bolts of silk unrolled like water, shimmering in the lantern light. Another stall held brass lamps, their surfaces etched with intricate patterns. Another displayed jars of honey, amber and gold in the glow. But there was something else here, something he couldn't quite name. A feeling, a sense that this place existed, slightly apart, as though it occupied a space between waking and sleep, between the world he knew and something deeper. A woman passed him, carrying a small bundle wrapped in cloth. She smiled at him, a gentle, knowing smile, and continued on her way. Samir took a breath and stepped forward into the bazaar. The ground beneath his feet was packed earth, soft and quiet. He walked slowly, letting himself drift through the rows of stalls. He wasn't looking for anything in particular. He didn't know what he was looking for. He just moved. Let the bazaar carry him. A merchant nodded to him as he passed. An old woman pouring tea from a copper pot offered him a cup, and he took it, sipping the warm, fragrant liquid. It tasted of mint and honey and something else, something that made him feel lighter, as though a small weight had been lifted from his chest. He returned the cup with a quiet, "Thank you," and moved on. The deeper he went into the bazaar, the quieter it became. The stalls here were fewer, the lanterns dimmer. The crowd thinned until he was almost alone, walking down a narrow road lined with tents of deep indigo and black. And then he saw it, a shop, or perhaps it was a tent. It was hard to say. The structure was made of dark fabric that seemed to absorb the light rather than reflect it. There were no goods displayed outside, no rugs or baskets or piles of fruit, just a simple sign, hanging above the entrance, written in elegant script, "Dreams, for those weary of waking." Samir stopped. He stood there for a long moment, staring at the sign, and then, slowly, he stepped inside. Chapter 3. First Impressions of the Bazaar. Inside, the shop was larger than it appeared from the outside, much larger. The walls were draped in heavy fabric, deep reds and purples and midnight blues, all layered over one another like the petals of some enormous flower. The ceiling was high and curved, and from it hung more lanterns, their light soft and golden. The air smelled wonderful, not overpowering, just a gentle presence of scent, lavender, amber, something green and fresh, like rain on leaves, something warm, like sun-baked stone. There were shelves along the walls, dozens of them, and on the shelves were bottles, hundreds of bottles. Some were made of clear glass, others of colored glass, green, blue, amber, violet. Some were tiny, no larger than a thumb. Others were the size of a wine bottle. Each one was stoppered with a cork or a glass stopper, and each one seemed to glow faintly from within. Samir moved closer to one of the shelves. He peered at the bottles. There were no labels, no writing, just the faint, shimmering light inside each one. "Welcome." The voice was quiet, calm, not startling but present. Samir turned. A man stood near the back of the shop. He was neither young nor old. His face was smooth, but his eyes held a depth that suggested he had seen many years. He wore simple robes of dark gray, and his hands were folded in front of him. He was watching Samir with a small, gentle smile. I saw your sign," Samir said. The man nodded. "And you came inside. That means you need something." "I don't know if I need anything," Samir said slowly. I can't sleep." "Yes," the man said simply. "I know." There was no judgment in his voice, no surprise, just understanding. "Who are you?" Samir asked. "I am the keeper of this place," the man said. "Some call me the dream merchant. Others call me the seller of rest. You may call me whatever feels right to you. And what is this place?" The merchant gestured around him. "This is where dreams are kept, where sleep is stored, where rest can be found, for those who have lost it." Samir frowned. "I don't understand." The merchant moved toward one of the shelves and ran his fingers gently along the bottles. "Most people think of dreams as something that just happens, something random. But dreams are more than that. They are states of being, ways of seeing. And sometimes When a person cannot find sleep, it is because they have lost their way to those states. He turned back to Samir. That is what I do. I help people find their way back. By selling them dreams? By offering them, the merchant corrected gently. Dreams cannot be bought. Not truly. They can only be accepted, chosen, received. Samir looked at the shelves, at the hundreds of glowing bottles. What kind of dreams? The merchant smiled. Every kind. Some are simple. The dream of a calm sea, the dream of a warm fire, the dream of a childhood memory. Others are more complex. The dream of forgiveness, the dream of courage, the dream of understanding. He moved to another shelf and picked up a small bottle filled with pale blue light. This one, for example, is the dream of a mountain morning, cool air, the smell of pine, the sound of a stream. It is uncomplicated, peaceful. Many who carry worry find rest in it. He set it down and picked up another. This one glowed with a soft amber light. And this is the dream of reconciliation. For those who carry regret, it shows them a moment, not as it was, but as it might have been. And in seeing it, they let go. Samir stared at the bottles. And people just drink them? Some do. Others breathe them. Some simply hold them and let the essence of the dream settle into their minds. Everyone receives a dream differently. The merchant set the bottle down and looked at Samir. The important thing is not how you receive it. It is that you choose it, that you allow yourself to rest. Samir was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, I don't know if I can. Can what? Rest. Let go. I've been trying for so long and I just can't. The merchant's expression softened. That is why you are here. Chapter 4. The unusual shop at the end of the row. Samir stood in the center of the shop, surrounded by shelves of glowing bottles, and for the first time in a long time, he felt something. Not peace, not yet, but a loosening, as though a knot inside him had begun, just slightly, to untie. The merchant moved quietly around the space, adjusting a bottle here, straightening a shelf there. His movements were slow and deliberate. There was no rush, no urgency, just presence. How long have you been here? Samir asked. A long time, the merchant said. Long enough to have seen many who carry what you carry. And what is that? The merchant paused and looked at him. Weariness, not of the body, of the spirit, the kind of tired that sleep does not fix, because it comes from within. Samir felt something tighten in his chest. Yes, he said quietly. That's exactly it. The merchant nodded. This shop exists for people like you. It does not appear for everyone, only for those who have reached a certain point, a point where they are ready, even if they don't know it yet. Ready for what? To stop running. The words hung in the air between them. Samir looked down at his hands. They were shaking slightly. He hadn't noticed until now. I don't feel ready, he said. No one ever does, the merchant replied gently. But you are here. That is enough. A soft sound came from the entrance of the shop and Samir turned. An old man had stepped inside. He moved slowly, leaning on a cane, his face lined with age. He looked around the shop with bright, curious eyes, and then he saw the merchant and smiled. Ah, the old man said, I was hoping you would be open tonight. The merchant inclined his head. For you, always. The old man chuckled. You say that to everyone, and I mean it every time. The old man made his way to one of the shelves and peered at the bottles. I've been having the same dream lately, he said, the one where I'm young again, strong, running through the fields near my village. It's a good dream, but it makes me sad when I wake. The merchant moved to his side. And what would you prefer? The old man was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I think I would like to dream of my wife, just sitting with her, holding her hand, nothing more. The merchant reached up and took down a bottle. It was small, filled with a soft rose-colored light. He held it out to the old man. "This one," he said quietly. The old man took the bottle and held it up to the light. His eyes filled with tears. "Yes," he whispered. "Yes, that's it. Take it home," the merchant said. "Before you sleep, uncork it and breathe it in. Just once. The dream will come." The old man nodded, clutching the bottle close to his chest. He looked at the merchant with deep gratitude. "Thank you." "Rest well," the merchant said. The old man turned and shuffled out of the shop, moving slowly into the night. Samir watched him go. "You didn't ask him for anything in return?" "No. Why not?" The merchant smiled. "Because what he needed cannot be bought, and what I give cannot be sold. This is not a transaction. It is an offering." Samir looked around the shop again. "How many people come here?" "As many as need to." "And they all find what they're looking for?" The merchant's smile softened. "They find what they are ready to receive. Sometimes that is the same thing. Sometimes it takes more than one visit." Before Samir could respond, the entrance darkened again, and a young woman stepped inside. She looked exhausted. Her eyes were red, and her shoulders sagged as though she were carrying a great weight. She saw the merchant and let out a shaky breath. "I heard about this place," she said. "I didn't believe it was real." "And yet here you are," the merchant said gently. The woman looked around, her gaze moving over the shelves of bottles. "I can't stop thinking," she said. "Every night I lie awake, and my mind just races. I think about everything I have to do, everything I've done wrong, everything I'm afraid of. I just want it to stop." The merchant nodded. "What would you like to dream of instead?" The woman's eyes filled with tears. "Nothing," she whispered. "I just want quiet, just for a little while." The merchant moved to a different shelf and took down a bottle. This one was filled with a pale, silvery light, like moonlight on water. "This is the dream of stillness," he said. "It is not empty. It is simply quiet, like snow falling, like a room with no sound. It will give your mind a place to rest." The woman took the bottle with trembling hands. "Thank you," she said, her voice breaking. "Go home," the merchant said softly, "and be gentle with yourself." She nodded and left, cradling the bottle as though it were something precious. Samir watched her go, and something inside him shifted. He looked at the merchant. "You really do this. You help people sleep." "I help them remember how," the merchant said. "Sleep is not something we do. It is something we allow, but many have forgotten that." "And me?" Samir asked quietly. "Can you help me?" The merchant looked at him for a long moment. Then he said, "Yes, but first, I need to understand what it is you are running from." Chapter 5. Meeting the Dream Merchant. The shop was quiet now, just Samir and the merchant, surrounded by the soft glow of 1,000 captured dreams. The merchant gestured to a low cushioned seat near the back of the shop. "Sit," he said gently. "There is no hurry." Samir moved to the seat and lowered himself onto it. The cushions were soft, filled with something that gave way beneath his weight in the most comfortable way. He hadn't realized how tired he was, how heavy his body felt, until this moment. The merchant settled onto a cushion across from him. Between them was a small brass tray with a pot of tea and 2 delicate cups. The merchant poured the tea slowly, the liquid golden in the lamplight, steam rising in soft spirals. He handed a cup to Samir. Samir took it and sipped. The tea was warm and fragrant. Chamomile, maybe, with hints of something else. something that made his shoulders drop, his breathing slow. "Tell me," the merchant said quietly, "when did you last sleep well?" Samir thought about it. "Months ago, maybe longer. It's hard to remember." "And before that? Were you always someone who struggled with sleep?" "No." Samir shook his head. "When I was younger, I slept easily, deeply. I would lie down and just go. I never thought about it. It just happened. And then something changed." It wasn't a question. Samir was quiet for a long moment, staring into his tea. "Yes," he said finally. "Something changed." The merchant waited. He did not push, did not prompt. He simply waited. And in that waiting, Samir found himself speaking. "I made a choice," he said slowly. "A few years ago, there was a woman I loved. We were going to marry, but I was afraid. Afraid I wasn't ready. Afraid I would fail her. So I left. I told her I needed time, that I wasn't sure, and she waited for a while. But eventually she moved on. She found someone else, someone who wasn't afraid." He paused, his throat tight. "And I've regretted it every day since." The merchant nodded slowly. "And now you cannot sleep because you are replaying that choice, over and over, asking yourself what might have been different." "Yes," Samir whispered. "Every night, I lie there and I think about what I should have said, what I should have done, and I can't let it go." "And you are tired," the merchant said gently, "not just of the sleeplessness, but of carrying this." Samir's eyes burned. "Yes." The merchant set down his tea and leaned forward slightly. "Tell me something, Samir. When you think of that choice, of that moment, what is it you truly fear?" Samir frowned. "I don't understand. You say you regret leaving her, but what is beneath that regret? What is the fear that keeps you awake?" Samir thought about it, really thought about it. And then, quietly, he said, "That I'll always be like this, that I'll always run when things matter, that I'll spend my whole life standing outside of my own life, too afraid to step in." The merchant's eyes were kind. "That is a hard thing to carry. I don't know how to put it down." "No," the merchant said. "You don't. Not yet. But that is why you are here." He rose and moved to the shelves. He walked slowly along them, his fingers trailing over the bottles, as though he were reading them by touch. Finally, he stopped. He reached up and took down a bottle. It was unlike the others Samir had seen. It was not filled with colored light. Instead, it seemed to hold nothing, or perhaps everything. It was clear, but when the light passed through it, it refracted into 100 subtle shades: silver, pale blue, the faintest hint of gold. The merchant brought it back and sat down, holding the bottle carefully in both hands. "This," he said, "is not a simple dream. It is not the dream of a memory, or a place, or a feeling. It is something deeper." "What is it?" Samir asked. "It is the dream of meeting yourself," the merchant said quietly. "The self you are afraid to meet, the self that knows what you need to hear." Samir stared at the bottle. "I don't understand." The merchant turned the bottle slowly in his hands, watching the light move through it. "When we cannot sleep, it is often because we are at war with ourselves. Part of us wants to rest, to let go, to move forward. But another part is afraid. Afraid of what will happen if we stop running. Afraid of what we might have to face." He looked at Samir. "This dream will take you to that place. The place where you meet the part of yourself you have been avoiding. And it will allow you, if you are ready, to make peace." Samir's heart was beating fast. "And if I'm not ready?" "Then the dream will be gentle," the merchant said. It will show you only what you can bear. No more, no less. You are safe here, Samir. Always. Samir looked at the bottle for a long time. He thought about the nights he had lain awake, the endless loop of thoughts, the exhaustion, the weight. And then he thought about the old man, walking out of the shop with his bottle of rose-colored light, tears in his eyes but peace on his face. He thought about the young woman, clutching the dream of stillness, her shoulders finally relaxed. And he thought about himself, about how tired he was, how much he wanted to rest. "Okay," he said quietly. "I'll try." The merchant smiled. "Good." Chapter 6. Stories of Other Customers. Before the merchant could say more, the entrance to the shop darkened once again, and a young boy stepped inside. He couldn't have been more than 10 years old, with wide, dark eyes and a serious expression. He looked around the shop with wonder, his gaze moving over the shelves and the lanterns and the bottles of light. Then he saw the merchant and straightened his shoulders, as though trying to appear brave. "Excuse me," the boy said. His voice was small but steady. "Are you the one who helps people with bad dreams?" The merchant's expression softened. "I am. Do you have bad dreams?" The boy nodded. "Every night. I dream that I'm lost, that I can't find my way home, and I wake up scared." "That sounds difficult," the merchant said gently. He rose and moved toward the boy. "Tell me, in these dreams when you are lost, is there anyone with you?" The boy shook his head. "No, I'm alone." "And how does that feel?" "Scary," the boy whispered. The merchant knelt down so he was at the boy's eye level. "I think," he said quietly, "that you do not need a dream that takes the fear away. I think you need a dream that shows you that even when you feel lost, you are not alone." He stood and went to a shelf, selecting a bottle filled with warm, golden light. He brought it back and held it out to the boy. "This is the dream of the guiding star," the merchant said. "In this dream, when you feel lost, you will look up, and you will see a light, and that light will lead you home, not quickly, not all at once, but step by step, and you will know, even in the dark, that you are being guided." The boy took the bottle carefully, holding it with both hands. He looked up at the merchant with wide, hopeful eyes. "Will it really work?" "It will," the merchant said, "but you must trust it, and you must trust yourself. Can you do that?" The boy thought about it, then nodded. "I think so." "Good." The merchant placed a gentle hand on the boy's shoulder. "Go home now, and before you sleep, hold this bottle close to your heart. Breathe deeply, and let the dream come." "Thank you," the boy said, his voice full of wonder. He turned and walked out of the shop, clutching the bottle like a treasure. Samir watched him go, something warm spreading through his chest. "You give them hope," he said. "I give them what they already have," the merchant replied. "I simply remind them it is there." Another figure appeared in the doorway. This time it was a middle-aged woman, well-dressed, with tired eyes and careful posture. She stepped inside and looked around with a mixture of skepticism and desperation. "I was told to come here," she said. Her voice was clipped, controlled. I don't believe in this sort of thing, but I've tried everything else." "You are welcome here regardless of what you believe," the merchant said calmly. The woman's shoulders tensed, then slowly relaxed. "I can't stop dreaming about work," she said. "Every night I dream I'm at my desk, I'm answering emails, I'm in meetings, I'm solving problems, and I wake up more exhausted than when I went to bed. I need it to stop." The merchant nodded slowly. "You are someone who carries great responsibility. Yes, and you have been taught that to rest is to fail. The woman's eyes widened slightly. How did you— It is a common wound, the merchant said gently, but it is not truth. Rest is not failure. Rest is how we sustain ourselves so that we can continue to give. He moved to a shelf and selected a bottle filled with deep green light, like sunlight filtering through forest leaves. This is the dream of the garden, he said. In this dream, there is no work, no tasks, no demands. There is only growth. Slow, quiet, patient growth. You do not have to do anything. You simply are, and that is enough. The woman took the bottle, and for a moment, her carefully controlled expression crumbled. Her eyes filled with tears. I've forgotten how to just be. I know, the merchant said softly. This will help you remember. She nodded, unable to speak, and left the shop with the bottle held close. Samir watched her go, then looked at the merchant. How do you know? How do you know which dream each person needs? The merchant returned to his seat and poured more tea. I listen, he said simply, not just to their words, but to what lies beneath the words. People often do not know what they truly need. They know what hurts, but not always why. So I listen, and I offer what I sense will help them find their way. And it always works? The merchant smiled. Not always in the way they expect. Sometimes a person receives a dream and finds it brings up more questions, more feelings. But that too is part of the healing. The dreams do not erase pain. They create space for it to be seen and released. Samir thought about this, about the bottle sitting between them, the one meant for him. I'm afraid, he admitted quietly, of the dream, of what it might show me, of what I might have to face. The merchant's gaze was steady and kind. That fear is understandable, but let me tell you something, Samir. The part of you that you fear meeting is not your enemy. It is not a monster. It is simply you. The you that has been hurt. The you that is tired. The you that needs kindness. He leaned forward slightly. And when you meet that part of yourself, you may find that it has been waiting for you. Not with anger, but with relief. Because it has been so lonely, carrying all of this alone. Samir's throat tightened. He looked down at his hands. The merchant rose and moved to the back of the shop. Come, he said gently. Let me show you something. Chapter 7. The Hero's Choice. What he fears. Samir followed the merchant deeper into the shop. He hadn't realized there was more space back here, but the shop seemed to unfold as they walked, revealing new alcoves and corridors lined with shelves. They entered a small, circular room. The walls here were covered entirely in bottles, hundreds, maybe thousands of them, each glowing with its own unique light. The effect was breathtaking, like standing inside a galaxy. In the center of the room was a low table, and on the table was a large leather-bound book. What is this place? Samir asked, his voice hushed. This is where I keep the records, the merchant said. He moved to the table and opened the book. The pages were filled with elegant handwriting. Names, dates, descriptions. Every person who has come here, the merchant continued. Every dream they have chosen, it is recorded here. Not as a transaction, but as a testament. A reminder that they were here, that they chose to seek rest. He turned the pages slowly. Samir caught glimpses of names and phrases. The dream of reconciliation, the dream of the mountain morning, the dream of being held. Some people, the merchant said, come here once and never return. They find what they need and move forward. Others come back again and again. Not because the first dream failed, but because healing is not a single moment, it is a process. He looked at Samir. There is no shame in needing more than one dream, no shame in needing time. Samir nodded slowly. He looked around the room at all the bottles, all the captured dreams, and he felt both small and somehow held. "The dream you have chosen," the merchant said, "the dream of meeting yourself. It is one of the most difficult, but also one of the most powerful. Are you ready to understand what it will ask of you?" "I think so," Samir said. The merchant closed the book and turned to face him fully. "This dream will take you into a space that exists only within you, a space where time moves differently, where the rules of waking life do not apply. In that space, you will encounter a version of yourself." "Which version?" "The one you need to meet," the merchant said. "It may be the version of you from that moment when you made the choice that haunts you. It may be the version of you as a child. It may be the version of you that you fear becoming. Or it may be the version of you that you could be if you let go." Samir's heart was beating fast now. "What will happen when I meet this version?" "That depends on you," the merchant said gently. "Some people, when they meet themselves, feel anger. Some feel sadness. Some feel relief. But whatever you feel, it is important that you do not run, that you stay, that you listen. And if I can't, if it's too much, then you will wake," the merchant said. "The dream will release you. You are always safe, Samir. You are always in control. The dream cannot harm you. It can only show you what is already there." Samir took a shaky breath. "What do I need to do?" The merchant gestured back toward the main room. "Come, we will prepare." They returned to the front of the shop. The merchant went to the shelf where he had placed Samir's bottle, the clear one that held every color and none. He took it down and brought it to the cushioned area where Samir had been sitting. He gestured for Samir to sit again, and Samir did. The merchant sat across from him, the bottle resting between them on the small brass tray. "Before you take this dream," the merchant said, "I need you to answer 3 questions, honestly, not for me, but for yourself." "All right," Samir said. The merchant's gaze was steady. "First question, what are you most afraid of?" Samir thought about it, really thought about it, and then he said quietly, "I'm afraid that I'm broken, that there's something wrong with me, that I'll never be able to love someone the way I'm supposed to, that I'll always be outside, looking in." The merchant nodded. "Second question, what do you most want?" Samir's throat tightened. "I want to stop feeling so tired. I want to stop replaying the past. I want to forgive myself. I want to sleep." "And third question," the merchant said softly, "if you could say one thing to yourself, to the part of you that made that choice all those years ago, what would you say?" Samir closed his eyes. The question hit him harder than he expected. He sat there for a long moment, breathing, feeling the weight of it, and then, in a voice barely above a whisper, he said, "I would tell him that he was scared, and that being scared doesn't make him bad. It just makes him human." When he opened his eyes, the merchant was smiling, not a wide smile, just a small, gentle curve of the lips. But there was something in it, something like pride. "Good," the merchant said. "You are ready." He picked up the bottle and held it out to Samir. "This is how you will take the dream. You will uncork the bottle. You will breathe in deeply 3 times, and then you will lie back on these cushions and close your eyes. The dream will come quickly. Do not resist it. Let it carry you." Samir took the bottle. It was warm in his hands and light, as though it weighed nothing at all. "Will you be here?" he asked. "When I wake up?" "I will be here," the merchant said. "I will watch over you. You are safe." Samir nodded. He looked down at the bottle. His hands were shaking. And then, before he could think too much about it, he pulled the cork free. A scent rose from the bottle. It was indescribable, not sweet, not sharp, just present, like the smell of the air before rain, like the smell of an old book, like the smell of home, even though he couldn't say what home smelled like. He brought the bottle to his nose and inhaled, once, twice, 3 times. The room began to blur at the edges. The light from the lantern stretched and softened. The merchant's voice came from somewhere far away, gentle and calm. "Lie back now, Samir. Let go." Samir lay back on the cushions. They were so soft, so impossibly soft. His body sank into them, and the tension he had been carrying for so long began to dissolve. He closed his eyes, and the dream began. Chapter 8. Shelves of Dreams. The world was different now. Samir opened his eyes, but he was no longer in the shop. He was standing in a vast open space. The ground beneath him was smooth and white, like polished marble. The sky above was not quite a sky. It was more like a dome of soft, shifting light, blues and purples and silvers moving slowly, like clouds seen from a great distance. He looked around. There were no walls, no boundaries, just space, endless space. And in that space, shelves, hundreds of them, thousands maybe. They stretched out in every direction, arranged in rows and spirals and patterns that made no logical sense but somehow felt right. Each shelf was filled with objects, but not bottles this time. These were different. Samir moved closer to the nearest shelf. On it were moments. He didn't know how else to describe them. They weren't pictures or videos. They were contained experiences. He could see them, feel them, almost step into them. One was a moment from his childhood. He was 7 years old, sitting under the lemon tree in his grandmother's courtyard, eating a piece of bread with honey. The sun was warm. The air smelled of jasmine. He was completely content. Another was a moment from his teenage years. He was walking home from school with friends, laughing about something he couldn't quite remember now. The light was golden. The world felt infinite. Another was more recent. He was sitting alone in a cafe, watching rain streak down the window, and for just a moment, he had felt at peace. No reason, just peace. Samir stared at these moments, these fragments of his own life, and something ached in his chest. He had forgotten these. He had forgotten that there had been good moments, simple moments, moments when he was okay. He moved down the row. The shelves changed. Now they held different kinds of moments, harder ones. The day he had told her he needed time, the look on her face, the day he had learned she was with someone else, the night he had lain awake, thinking that he had made the biggest mistake of his life. These moments were darker, heavier, and yet they were here, on the shelves, not hidden, not locked away, just present. "This is your life." Samir turned. The merchant was there, or a version of the merchant. He looked the same, but also translucent, like he was part of the dream itself. "All of it," the merchant said, gesturing to the shelves. "The joy and the pain, the peace and the regret. It is all here, because it is all part of you." "Why are you showing me this?" Samir asked. "Because you need to see it," the merchant said gently. "You have been carrying only the heavy moments. You have forgotten that there are others, and in forgetting, you have lost balance." Samir looked around at the endless shelves. "There are so many." "Yes, a lifetime of moments, and you have reduced yourself to just a few of them, the ones that hurt the most." Samir felt tears prick his eyes. "I don't know how to stop." "You don't have to stop," the merchant said. "You just have to remember the rest. You have to let yourself see that you are more than your regrets." The merchant gestured to a shelf that Samir hadn't noticed before. It was different from the others. It was empty, but glowing with potential. "What is that?" Samir asked. "Those are the moments you have not yet lived," the merchant said. "The ones that are waiting for you, but you cannot reach them if you are still clinging to the past." Samir stepped closer to the empty shelf. He could almost see shapes forming there, faint, ghostly outlines of possible futures. In one, he was sitting with someone, holding their hand. In another, he was laughing with friends, his face lighter than it had been in years. In another, he was simply walking through the city at dawn, breathing easily, no weight on his shoulders. "These could be real?" Samir whispered. "They could be," the merchant said, "if you choose them, if you let yourself move forward. But what if I make the wrong choice again? What if I—" "There is no perfect choice," the merchant interrupted gently. "There is only the choice you make, and then the next one, and the next. Life is not a single moment, Samir. It is a river. It moves, it changes, and you have been standing on the bank, afraid to step in, afraid that if you move, you will be swept away." "Won't I be?" the merchant smiled. "Perhaps, but you might also find that you know how to swim." Samir stood there, staring at the glowing shelf of unlived moments. He wanted to reach out. He wanted to touch them, but he was afraid. "Come," the merchant said. "There is someone you need to meet." Chapter 9. The Special Rare Dream. The merchant led Samir through the maze of shelves. The space seemed to shift as they walked, rearranging itself, until finally they arrived at a door. It was a simple door, wooden with an iron handle, but there was something about it, something that made Samir's heart beat faster. "What's behind it?" he asked. "The part of the dream you came here for," the merchant said. "The meeting with myself." "Yes." Samir stared at the door. His mouth was dry. "What if I'm not ready?" "Then you will wake," the merchant said, "and you can come back another time. There is no shame in waiting." Samir thought about this. He thought about all the nights he had lain awake, all the exhaustion, all the weight, and he thought about what the merchant had said. "You have been standing on the bank, afraid to step in." He had been standing still for so long. Maybe it was time to move. "Okay," he said quietly. "I'm ready." The merchant nodded. "Then open the door, and remember, you are safe, always." Samir reached out and took the handle. It was cool beneath his palm. He took a breath, and then he opened the door. Inside was a room, a small, simple room. The walls were soft and white. There was a single window through which gentle light poured, and in the center of the room was a chair, and sitting in the chair was Samir. Not present-day Samir. This was younger Samir, the Samir from that moment, the moment when he had made the choice to leave. He looked exactly as Samir remembered. Tired eyes, tense shoulders, hands gripped together in his lap. Younger Samir looked up, and his eyes widened. "You," he said. "Me," Samir replied quietly. For a long moment, they just looked at each other. Then younger Samir said, his voice tight, "You're angry with me." "I was," Samir said, "for a long time. I'm sorry." Younger Samir's voice broke. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know what to do. I was so scared. I thought if I stayed, I would ruin everything. I thought I wasn't good enough. I know," Samir said. He moved into the room and sat down on the floor in front of the chair, so he was looking up at his younger self. "I know, I remember." Younger Samir was crying now. "I destroyed everything. I lost her. I lost myself." Samir felt his own tears start to fall. "You made a choice, a scared choice, a human choice. It was the wrong choice." "Maybe," Samir said. Or maybe it was just the only choice you could make at the time. Younger Samir shook his head. I should have been braver. You were doing the best you could, Samir said. You were terrified. You didn't know how to ask for help. You didn't know how to say, I'm scared, but I want to try. You only knew how to run. He reached out and took his younger self's hands. And I've hated you for that, Samir said quietly. I've hated you for so long. I've replayed that moment over and over, thinking that if I could just go back, if I could just change it, everything would be okay. But you can't, younger Samir whispered. No, Samir said, I can't. None of us can go back. We can only move forward. Younger Samir looked at him with red, swollen eyes. Do you forgive me? Samir's throat closed up. He sat there holding his younger self's hands, and he realized this was the moment. This was what he had come here for. Not to change the past, not to erase the choice, but to forgive, to let go, to finally stop punishing himself. Yes, he said, his voice breaking, I forgive you. Younger Samir let out a sob, and then he began to dissolve. Not violently, not painfully, just gently, like mist in sunlight. His hands became light, his body became light, and then he was gone, and Samir was alone in the room. But he didn't feel alone. He felt lighter, as though something that had been tied around his chest for years had finally been cut free. The door behind him opened, and the merchant stepped in. Well done, he said softly. Samir looked up at him, tears still streaming down his face. Is it over? Not yet, the merchant said. There is one more thing you need to see. Chapter 10. Preparation for Immersion in the Dream. The merchant extended his hand to Samir, and Samir took it, rising to his feet. His legs felt unsteady, but strong, as though he had been carrying a heavy pack for miles and had finally set it down. The room around them began to shift. The walls dissolved like watercolor in rain, and they were standing once again in the space of shelves. But it was different now, quieter, calmer. The shelves seemed to glow with a softer light. What happened? Samir asked, his voice hoarse from crying. You released something, the merchant said gently. A weight you have been carrying, the weight of unforgiveness, not toward her, but toward yourself. Samir looked down at his hands. They felt different, lighter. He flexed his fingers, and it was as though he could feel the blood moving through them more freely. I thought it would be harder, he said. Sometimes the things we fear most are simpler than we imagine, the merchant replied. Not easy, but simple. You needed to see yourself, not as a villain, but as a frightened person doing his best. And once you could see that, forgiveness became possible. Samir nodded slowly. He looked around at the shelves, at all the moments of his life arranged in this impossible space. They looked different now, too. Even the painful moments seemed softer, less sharp. What happens now? He asked. Now, the merchant said, we go deeper. Deeper? The merchant gestured ahead to where the shelves seemed to end and a new space opened up. The forgiveness you just offered yourself was necessary, essential, but it is not the final step. There is one more threshold to cross. What threshold? The one between letting go and receiving, the merchant said. You have released the past. Now you must be willing to accept the present and the possibility of the future. Samir frowned. I don't understand. You will, the merchant said. Come. They walked together through the space of shelves. As they moved, Samir noticed that the shelves were gradually changing. The moments they held were becoming less defined, more like impressions than memories. colors and feelings rather than specific scenes. And then the shelves ended altogether. They stepped into a new space, and Samir's breath caught in his throat. It was beautiful. They were standing in a garden. Not a wild garden, but not a formal one either. It was somewhere in between, organized enough to feel intentional, but loose enough to feel alive. There were flowering vines climbing over stone walls. There were fruit trees heavy with lemons and oranges. There were herbs growing in neat rows, their fragrance rising on the warm air. And in the center of the garden was a fountain. Water flowed from it in a continuous gentle stream, filling a circular basin below. The sound of it was soothing, constant but not intrusive. Just there, like breathing. "Where are we?" Samir asked. "We are in the deepest part of your dream," the merchant said, "the part that exists beneath thought, beneath memory. This is the place of rest, of restoration. This is where healing happens." Samir moved slowly toward the fountain. The garden smelled wonderful, jasmine and rose and something green and alive. The light here was soft, golden, like late afternoon sun filtered through leaves. He reached the fountain and looked down into the water. It was clear and still, and in its surface he could see his reflection, but it was not the reflection he expected. The face looking back at him was his own, but different. This version of him looked rested. The lines around his eyes were softer. His shoulders were relaxed. His expression was calm. Not happy exactly, not smiling, just at peace. "This is who you are," the merchant said quietly, coming to stand beside him. "Beneath the exhaustion, beneath the regret, beneath all the weight you have been carrying, this is the you that has always been there, waiting." Samir stared at the reflection. "I've forgotten what it feels like," he whispered. "To be at peace." "I know," the merchant said, "but your body remembers, your spirit remembers, and now you must let yourself remember too." The merchant knelt beside the fountain and cupped his hands in the water. He lifted them, and the water caught the light, gleaming like liquid gold. "This is the water of release," he said. "Drink, and let yourself receive what you have been denying yourself for so long." "What am I denying myself?" "Rest," the merchant said simply. "Permission to be imperfect, permission to be human, permission to start again." Samir knelt beside him. He looked at the water in the merchant's hands. It looked ordinary, just water, but there was something about it, something that made his heart ache with longing. Slowly, carefully, he lowered his face and drank. The water was cool, clean. It tasted like nothing and everything at once. And as it moved down his throat, Samir felt something shift inside him. It was as though a door he hadn't known was closed had suddenly opened, as though light was pouring into a room that had been dark for years. He gasped and sat back on his heels, his hand to his chest. What was that?" "Permission," the merchant said gently. "To let go, to rest, to be." Samir closed his eyes and felt tears stream down his face, but they were different now, not tears of pain or regret, just release, pure release. "I'm so tired," he whispered. "I know," the merchant said, "and now, finally, you can sleep." The merchant stood and offered his hand once more. Samir took it and rose to his feet. His body felt heavy now, but in a good way, the kind of heavy that comes before deep, restful sleep. "Come," the merchant said. "There is one more place I want to show you." They walked through the garden, past the flowering vines and the fruit trees, to a small alcove at the far end. In the alcove was a low bed, covered in soft blankets and cushions. It looked impossibly comfortable, inviting. "This is where you will rest," the merchant said. "Here, in the deepest part of the dream. Time does not move the same way here. You can stay as long as you need, and when you are ready, you will wake." Samir looked at the bed. Every part of him wanted to lie down, to sink into those blankets, to finally rest. But something held him back. "What if I wake up," he said quietly, "and nothing has changed? What if I go back to my life and I still can't sleep? What if all of this was just a dream?" The merchant smiled. "It is a dream, but dreams are not separate from waking life, Samir. They are part of it. What you have learned here, what you have released here, it will come with you, not as a memory, but as a change, a shift. You will not be the same person who walked into my shop tonight." "How do you know?" "Because you have done the work," the merchant said. "You have faced yourself. You have forgiven yourself. You have allowed yourself to receive. Those are not small things. They are transformations, and transformations do not undo themselves." Samir took a shaky breath. "I want to believe that." "Then believe it," the merchant said gently. "Trust the work you have done. Trust yourself." He gestured to the bed. "Now rest. You have earned it." Samir moved slowly to the bed. He sat down on the edge, and the mattress gave way beneath him in the most perfect way, soft but supportive, cradling him. He lay back, and the blanket settled over him like a gentle embrace. The pillow beneath his head was exactly the right softness. The weight of the blanket was exactly right. He closed his eyes, and for the first time in longer than he could remember, he felt safe. "Thank you," he whispered. "Rest now." The merchant's voice came from somewhere far away. "I will be here. You are safe. You are held. Let go." And Samir let go. Chapter 11. The beginning of the dream. Transition to another world. Samir floated in darkness. Not a frightening darkness, not an empty darkness, just space, quiet space, soft space, like floating in warm water at night with stars above. He had no sense of time, no sense of urgency. There was nothing he needed to do, nowhere he needed to be. Just this floating, this rest. Gradually, slowly, the darkness began to lighten, not to bright day, but to a soft pre-dawn glow, the kind of light that comes just before the sun rises, when the world is still hushed and quiet. Shapes began to form around him. He was no longer floating in emptiness. He was somewhere. He opened his eyes. He was lying on the rooftop of a building. His building, he realized, his home. But he was on the roof, which he had never been on before in waking life. The roof was flat and wide, covered in soft rugs and cushions. Above him, the sky was that deep, luminous blue of early morning. Stars were still visible, but fading. The air was cool and fresh, carrying the scent of the city waking up. Bread baking somewhere, jasmine from a nearby garden, the faint salt of distant sea. Samir sat up slowly. His body felt rested, truly rested. The bone-deep exhaustion that had been his constant companion for so long was gone, or at least quieter, like a distant echo rather than a present weight. He looked around. The city spread out below him in all directions. He could see the narrow streets, the domed roofs, the minarets rising like fingers pointing to heaven. Everything was bathed in that soft blue light, and he was not alone. Sitting a few feet away, also looking out at the city, was himself, but not younger self. This was future self, or perhaps present self, the self he had seen reflected in the fountain, the one who looked rested, at peace. This other Samir turned and smiled at him. "Hello." Samir blinked. "Hello." "Beautiful morning," the other Samir said, turning back to the view. "Yes," Samir agreed. He moved to sit beside his other self, crossing his legs and settling onto the cushions. For a moment, they just sat there together, looking out at the waking city. "I've been waiting for you," the other Samir said after a while. "Waiting? For how long?" "A long time. Years, maybe. I've been here the whole time, you know. Waiting for you to stop running. Waiting for you to sit down." Samir felt something tighten in his chest. "I'm sorry." "Don't be sorry," the other Samir said gently. "There's nothing to be sorry for. You weren't ready before. Now you are. That's all." They sat in comfortable silence. A bird called somewhere in the distance. The light grew incrementally brighter. "What happens now?" Samir asked. "Now." The other Samir considered this. "Now you live. You wake up, you go back to your life, but you take this with you." He gestured to the space between them. "This peace, this rest, this knowing that you can stop, that you can sit down, that you don't have to run anymore. What if I forget?" "You might," the other Samir said honestly. "The mind has old habits, but you'll remember again, and each time you remember, it will be easier. You'll be able to find this place." He tapped his chest. "Inside yourself. You won't need a dream merchant. You won't need a magic shop. You'll just close your eyes, breathe, and come here. Here, to this rooftop, to this feeling," the other Samir corrected. "This place isn't real, you know. Not in the way your apartment is real or the street below, but the feeling, the peace, the rest. That's real, and you can access it whenever you need to." Samir nodded slowly. He looked down at his hands. They were steady, calm. "I forgave myself," he said quietly. "Earlier, in the dream, I forgave the version of me that made that choice." "I know," the other Samir said. "I felt it. Do you know what that means?" "What?" "It means you're free." The other Samir turned to look at him fully. "Not free of the memory, not free of the fact that it happened, but free of the weight, free of the self-punishment, free to choose differently now." "And her?" Samir asked. "The woman I left?" "She has her own life now," the other Samir said gently. "Her own path, and that's okay. Your paths diverged. That happens. It doesn't mean you're broken. It doesn't mean you failed. It just means you went different ways. I miss her. I know. And that's okay too. You can miss someone and still move forward. The two things can coexist." Samir felt tears prick his eyes again, but they were gentle tears, soft ones. "What do I do now?" he asked. "When I wake up, how do I live differently?" The other Samir smiled. "You don't have to do anything dramatic. You don't have to change your whole life overnight. Just small things. Go to bed at a decent hour. Let yourself rest when you're tired. Stop replaying the past in your mind. When the thoughts come, and they will, just acknowledge them and let them pass. Like clouds." "That simple?" "That's simple," the other Samir confirmed. "Not easy, but simple. And maybe, when you're ready, open yourself to connection again. Not to replace her, but to allow something new, something different. You have so much love inside you, Samir. Don't let it go to waste out of fear." Samir nodded. He looked out at the city. The sun was just beginning to break over the horizon now, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. "It's beautiful," he whispered. "It is," the other Samir agreed. "And you've been missing it. You've been so stuck in your head, in the past, that you've missed so much beauty, so much life. But that ends now, if you choose it." "I choose it," Samir said firmly. "I choose to wake up. I choose to live. I choose to rest." The other Samir reached over and placed a hand on Samir's shoulder. The touch was warm, solid, real, even though Samir knew on some level that this was all a dream. "Good," the other Samir said. "Then it's time." Time for what? Time to wake up. Chapter 12. Journey through one's own memories. Before Samir could respond, the rooftop began to shift. The light grew brighter, and the city below began to blur and reshape itself. "Wait," Samir said. "I'm not ready." "Yes, you are," the other Samir said, his voice already fading. "Trust yourself. You know the way." And then the other Samir was gone, dissolving into light. Samir was alone on the rooftop, and the world was changing around him. The rooftop dissolved, and he found himself standing in a hallway. Not a hallway he recognized at first, but then, yes, he knew this place. This was his grandmother's house, the house where he had spent so many summers as a child. The walls were painted a soft yellow. The floor was covered in old tiles, blue and white in geometric patterns. He could hear sounds from deeper in the house, his grandmother's voice, humming a melody he had almost forgotten. He walked down the hallway, his footsteps silent. He passed a mirror and caught a glimpse of himself. He looked young, maybe 8 or 9 years old. This was a memory, he realized, a dream of a memory. He followed the sound of his grandmother's humming and found himself in the kitchen. She was there, standing at the stove, stirring a pot of something that smelled wonderful. She turned and saw him, and her face lit up with a smile. "There you are," she said in Arabic. "I was wondering when you would come." "Grandmother," Samir said, and his voice came out small and young. She set down her spoon and opened her arms, and he found himself moving into her embrace. She was warm and soft, and she smelled like cardamom and rose water and safety. "You've been so far away," she said softly, stroking his hair, "lost in the dark places of your mind." "I'm sorry," he whispered. "Shh." She held him tighter. "There is nothing to be sorry for. You are here now. That is what matters." She pulled back and looked at him with her kind, knowing eyes. "Do you remember what I used to tell you? When you were small and afraid of the dark?" Samir thought about it, and then, yes, he remembered. "You said that the dark is not empty. It is full of rest, full of dreams, full of the quiet things that can only grow in stillness." His grandmother smiled. "Yes, and I told you that sleep is not an escape. It is a return to yourself, to the quiet place inside where you are always safe, always held." "I forgot that," Samir said. "I know." She cupped his face in her hands. "But now you remember, and that is what matters. Memory is a gift, Habibi. Both the beautiful memories and the painful ones. They teach us, they shape us, but they do not have to trap us." She released him and turned back to the stove. "Come, sit. Let me feed you." Samir sat at the small wooden table, the same table where he had eaten countless meals as a child. His grandmother ladled soup into a bowl and set it in front of him. It was lentil soup, his favorite, with lemon and cumin. He ate slowly, savoring each spoonful. It tasted exactly as he remembered, warm, nourishing, full of love. "When you wake," his grandmother said, sitting across from him, "you will remember this, not just with your mind, but with your body. Your body will remember what it feels like to be nourished, to be cared for, to be at peace. And when you feel yourself slipping back into the old patterns, the worry, the replaying, the exhaustion, you can return here, to this memory, to this feeling." "How?" Samir asked. "Close your eyes," she said. "Take a breath, and remember this moment, this table, this soup, my voice, the feeling of being safe. Your body knows how. It has not forgotten. It has just been waiting for permission." Samir finished the soup, and as he set down the spoon, the kitchen began to fade. "Grandmother, wait." "I am always with you," she said, her voice echoing as the room dissolved. "In your memories, in your heart, in the quiet moments. You are never alone, Habibi, never." And then the kitchen was gone. Samir found himself standing in yet another place, another memory, this one more recent. He was standing on a street corner in his city, night, but not the frightening kind of night, the peaceful kind, the kind where the air is cool and the stars are bright and the world feels manageable. He looked around and realized this was the night he had walked through the old quarter, the night the old man had told him about the night bazaar. But this time, he wasn't reliving it. He was watching it. He could see himself, the version of himself from earlier that night, walking down the street, shoulders hunched, face drawn with exhaustion. He watched as his earlier self stopped to buy tea from a street vendor, watched as he sat on a low wall and sipped it, staring at nothing. And he felt such compassion for that version of himself, that tired, lost version. "You didn't know," he said softly to the image. "You didn't know that help was coming, that rest was possible. You thought you were trapped, but you weren't. You just needed to take one step, just one, into the dark, toward the unknown. And you did. You did it." The image of his earlier self stood and continued walking, disappearing around a corner, and Samir stood there, feeling something shift inside him, a deep, profound gratitude for that version of himself, for having the courage to walk into the night, to seek the bazaar, to accept the merchant's offer. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you for not giving up." The street faded, and Samir found himself in one more place, one final memory. He was standing in the garden of his own home, the small courtyard with the lemon tree. It was daytime, bright and warm. The lemon tree was in bloom, white flowers covering its branches, their scent heavy on the air, and sitting beneath the tree, reading a book, was a woman. Not her, not the woman he had left, a different woman, someone he didn't recognize. She looked up from her book and saw him, and she smiled, a warm, open smile. "There you are," she said. "I was wondering if you'd come out." Samir stared at her. "Who are you?" She laughed softly. "I'm possibility," she said. "I'm the future that hasn't happened yet, the one you've been too afraid to imagine." "Are you real?" "Not yet," she said. "But I could be, if you let me, if you let yourself be open to new beginnings, new connections, new love." She stood and walked toward him. She was beautiful, yes, but not in a way that hurt to look at, just beautiful in a human, real way. She stopped in front of him and took his hand. "You don't have to be alone forever," she said gently. "You don't have to punish yourself forever. There is so much life waiting for you, Samir, so much love, so much joy, if you just let yourself reach for it." Samir felt tears stream down his face. "I'm afraid." "I know," she said, "but fear doesn't have to stop you. You can be afraid and still move forward. That's what courage is." She squeezed his hand and then released it. "I'll be here," she said, "waiting, whenever you're ready." And then she faded, and the garden faded, and Samir was floating again in that soft, warm darkness. But this time, he was not alone. He could feel presences around him, his grandmother, his younger self, his rested self, the possibility of futures yet to come. They were all there, holding him, supporting him, loving him. And in that moment, Samir understood. He was not broken. He was not damaged. He was not beyond repair. He was simply human, beautifully, imperfectly, completely human, and that was enough. It had always been enough. Chapter 13. Meeting oneself without anxiety. The darkness gently lifted like a fog dissolving in morning sun. Samir opened his eyes. He was back in the garden, the dream garden, the one with the fountain and the flowering vines and the fruit trees. The merchant's garden, he supposed, though maybe it was also his own. Maybe it had always been his own. He was still lying on the low bed, the blankets soft around him. But he felt different, renewed, as though he had slept for days, for years, and had finally gotten the rest he needed. He sat up slowly. The garden was quiet, peaceful. The light was soft and golden, that perpetual late afternoon quality that made everything look gentle and warm. And standing by the fountain, exactly where Samir had left him, was the merchant. He turned as Samir rose from the bed, and he smiled. "Welcome back." Samir moved toward him on unsteady legs. His body felt heavy, but good. The heaviness of true rest, not exhaustion. "How long was I asleep?" Samir asked. "Time moves differently here," the merchant said. "Long enough. Exactly as long as you needed." Samir reached the fountain and looked down into the water. His reflection looked back at him. And yes, it was the rested version, the peaceful version, the version he had met on the rooftop. "It's me," he said softly. "It was always you," the merchant replied. "You have simply been too tired to see it." Samir looked at the merchant. "I met so many versions of myself in there, in the dream. Yes, my younger self, my rested self, my future self, my grandmother, a woman I haven't even met yet. All aspects of you," the merchant said. "All parts of your story, past, present, and possible futures. You needed to see them, to understand that you are not just one moment, not just one mistake. You are vast, multitudes, all of it true, all of it you." "I forgave him," Samir said. "The younger version, the one who made the choice." "I know, and I feel lighter." "That is because forgiveness removes weight," the merchant said. "Not the memory, not the fact, but the burden, the shame, the endless punishment. All of that you set down." Samir took a deep breath. The air in the garden smelled impossibly sweet. Jasmine and rose and something else. Something that smelled like peace itself, if peace had a scent. "What happens now?" he asked. "When I wake up for real, when I leave this place?" The merchant moved to sit on the edge of the fountain. "You return to your life, to your home, to your city. But you return different, changed, not dramatically. You will not suddenly be a new person, but something inside you has shifted, and that shift will change everything." "How?" "You will sleep," the merchant said simply. "That is the first thing. Tonight, when you lie down in your bed, you will sleep. Not perfectly. Not without dreams, but you will sleep. And each night it will become easier, because you have remembered how. You have given yourself permission. And the thoughts, the replaying, they will still come," the merchant said honestly. "The mind does not change overnight, but when they come, you will be able to see them for what they are. Just thoughts, not truth, not commands, just thoughts, and you will be able to let them pass, like clouds across the sky. Sometimes you will get caught in them. That's normal, that's human, but you will also be able to step back, to breathe, to return to this place." He gestured around the garden. "Inside yourself." Samir nodded slowly. "And the future? The possibility of new connections, new love. The woman I saw under the lemon tree," the merchant smiled. "That is up to you. She is a possibility, not a guarantee. But if you are open, if you allow yourself to be vulnerable again, then yes, love will find you. Perhaps not that exact woman, perhaps someone else, but love will find you, because you are no longer hiding from it. I'm afraid, Samir admitted. Good, the merchant said. Fear means you care. Fear means you are alive. Fear means you are willing to risk again. That is not weakness. That is tremendous courage. Samir felt tears slip down his cheeks, but he was smiling through them. Thank you, he said. Thank you for all of this, for the dream, for the garden, for showing me the way back to myself. The merchant rose and placed both hands on Samir's shoulders. I did not show you the way. You found it yourself. I simply held the space, offered the dream, but the work, the forgiveness, the release, the opening, that was all you. I don't know how to repay you. There is no debt, the merchant said gently. This is not a transaction. You came here because you needed help, and I helped because that is what I do. The only payment I ask is that you rest, that you live, that you let yourself be happy. That is enough. Samir nodded, unable to speak. The merchant stepped back. It is time now, time to return. How? Close your eyes, the merchant said. Take 3 deep breaths, and when you open them again, you will be back in the shop, and from there you can go home. Samir hesitated. Will I see you again? The merchant smiled. If you need to, the bazaar will be here. I will be here, for as long as people need a place to find rest. But I hope, he paused, his eyes warm, I hope you will not need to come back. I hope you will find your rest in your own life, in your own bed, in your own heart. I'll try, Samir said. That is all anyone can do. Samir took a breath. Then another. He looked around the garden one last time, committing it to memory. The fountain, the flowering vines, the fruit trees, the quality of the light, the scent of jasmine. And then he closed his eyes. 1 breath, in and out. 2 breaths, deeper now. 3 breaths, long and slow and full. And when he opened his eyes, Chapter 14, Return to the Shop. He was back in the shop, the dream merchant's shop, with its shelves of glowing bottles and its soft lantern light and its heavy drapes of midnight blue and purple. Samir was lying on the cushions where he had first taken the dream. The bottle, the clear one that held all colors and none, was sitting on the brass tray beside him, empty now. Its light had faded. The merchant was sitting across from him, exactly as he had been before, as though no time had passed at all. But Samir knew that time had passed, maybe hours, maybe just minutes. It was impossible to say. The merchant's eyes were open, watching him calmly. "Welcome back," he said softly. Samir sat up slowly. His body felt good, rested, alive. The bone-deep exhaustion that had been his constant companion for so long was gone, or at least distant, like an echo of an echo. "I did it," Samir said, his voice filled with wonder. "I really did it." "Yes," the merchant said. "You did." Samir looked down at his hands. They were steady, calm, no shaking, no tension. "How do you feel?" the merchant asked. "I feel—" Samir paused, searching for the right word. "I feel awake, truly awake, for the first time in so long. Not the kind of awake where you're tired but can't sleep. The kind where you're present. Here. Real." The merchant smiled. "Good. That is exactly as it should be." Samir looked around the shop. It looked the same as it had before, and yet somehow different. Or maybe he was the one who was different. Maybe he was seeing it with new eyes. "What time is it?" he asked. "Late," the merchant said. "Or early, depending on how you look at it. The bazaar will close soon. It is almost dawn. Samir's eyes widened. I was in the dream that long? Time is fluid in dreams, the merchant said. But yes, you have been here for several hours, sleeping, dreaming, healing, and you stayed the whole time? I told you I would, the merchant said simply. I do not leave those who are in the middle of a dream. It is sacred work, important work. I would not abandon it. Samir felt a wave of gratitude so strong it almost hurt. Thank you. The merchant inclined his head. You are welcome. But remember, the work is not finished. What you experienced tonight was a beginning, not an ending. You will need to carry it with you. Practice it. Return to it when the old patterns try to reassert themselves. I will, Samir promised. I will. The merchant reached for the empty bottle and held it up to the light. This bottle is yours now, he said. Keep it. When you need a reminder, when you need to remember what it felt like to rest, to forgive, to open, hold this bottle. Let it remind you of what you found here tonight. He held it out and Samir took it carefully. It was light in his hands, and though the glow had faded, he could still feel a warmth to it. A presence. Thank you, Samir said again. The merchant rose, and Samir rose with him. The merchant walked to the entrance of the shop and pushed aside the heavy fabric that served as a door. Beyond, the night bazaar was quiet now. Most of the stalls were closed. Most of the lanterns dimmed. A few late shoppers moved slowly through the aisles, but the crowd had thinned. The bazaar closes at dawn, the merchant said. You should go home now. Rest in your own bed. Let the dream continue in your own life. Samir nodded. He moved toward the entrance, then paused and turned back. Will you remember me? He asked. I remember everyone who comes here, the merchant said. Every person, every dream, every story. You are part of the tapestry now, Samir. You will not be forgotten. Samir smiled, tears blurring his vision. Goodbye, he said. Not goodbye, the merchant corrected gently. Just until we meet again, if we do. If we do, Samir echoed. And then he stepped out of the shop and into the night bazaar. Chapter 15. The calm departure and open ending. The bazaar was quieter now, almost hushed, as though it too was preparing for sleep. Samir walked slowly through the aisles, the empty bottle held carefully in his hands. He passed stalls that were packing up their wares. A woman folding silk fabrics into careful squares. An old man extinguishing lanterns one by one, each flame winking out with a soft breath. A young boy sweeping the ground with a palm leaf broom, the whisper of it against the earth like a lullaby. No one spoke to him. No one tried to sell him anything. They simply nodded as he passed, gentle acknowledgments, as though they understood, as though they knew where he had been. The air was beginning to change. The warm, spice-scented air of the bazaar was giving way to something cooler, fresher, the air of pre-dawn, that liminal time when night is releasing its hold and day has not yet fully arrived. Samir reached the edge of the bazaar, the same archway through which he had entered what felt like a lifetime ago. He paused there and turned back, looking at the rows of tents and stalls, the few remaining lanterns glowing like fireflies in the dimness. It was beautiful, all of it. This impossible place, this pocket of peace in the middle of the night. He committed it to memory, not just with his mind but with his body. The feel of the packed earth beneath his feet, the scent of incense and spices, the soft murmur of voices, the gentle glow of lantern light, and then he turned and walked through the archway back into his city. The streets were empty now, completely empty. The moon had set, and the stars were beginning to fade as the sky lightened from black to deep blue to the palest gray. Samir walked slowly through the narrow streets. There was no hurry, no urgency, just presence. Each step deliberate, each breath full. He noticed things he had never noticed before, the way the shadows fell across the walls, creating patterns like lace, the small plants growing in cracks in the stone, stubborn and alive, the distant sound of a fountain somewhere, water moving in eternal circles. His city, his home. It was the same as it had always been, and yet it felt different, or rather, he felt different in it. He was no longer walking through it as a ghost, disconnected and exhausted. He was here, present, alive. He passed the square with the fountain where he had stopped earlier. Or was it yesterday? Time felt strange now, fluid. He paused there for a moment and dipped his hand in the water, just as he had before. But this time, instead of just feeling the coolness, he let himself really experience it. The temperature, the movement, the way the water caught the first faint light of dawn. Beautiful. All of it was beautiful. He continued on. As he walked, he thought about everything he had experienced. The merchant, the shelves of dreams, the meeting with his younger self, his grandmother's kitchen, the woman under the lemon tree, the rooftop at dawn, the garden with the fountain. All of it had been a dream. He knew that. And yet, it had also been real. Real in the way that mattered. Real in the way that changed things. He could feel the change inside him. It was subtle, not dramatic. He was not a completely different person. But something had shifted. Some burden had been lifted. Some door had been opened. He reached his street as the sky was turning from gray to pale pink. Dawn was coming, truly coming. He stood in front of his door and took out his key. His hand was steady. His breathing was calm. There was no tightness in his chest, no weight on his shoulders. He unlocked the door and stepped inside. His house was quiet, still, waiting. The air smelled faintly of the lemon tree in the courtyard. He moved through the room slowly, touching things as he passed. The wall, the back of a chair, the edge of a table, grounding himself, reminding himself that this was real. This was home. He went to the courtyard and stood beneath the lemon tree. The sky above was growing lighter by the moment, pink and gold now, with streaks of orange near the horizon. The tree's leaves rustled softly in the early morning breeze. Samir set the empty bottle down on the small table beside the courtyard bench. He would keep it there, he decided, where he could see it, where he could hold it when he needed to remember. He took a deep breath. The air was cool and clean. He could hear the city beginning to wake around him. The first call to prayer would come soon. Then the sounds of people stirring, doors opening, lives beginning again. But for now, there was just this moment, this quiet, this peace. Samir went inside to his bedroom. The room looked the same as it always had. The same bed, the same walls, the same window with its view of the rooftops. But he was different. He sat on the edge of the bed and removed his sandals. He lay back on the mattress and pulled the light blanket over himself. The pillow beneath his head was soft. The mattress supported him perfectly. Everything was exactly as it should be. He closed his eyes, and for the first time in longer than he could remember, he was not afraid of the darkness behind his eyelids. He was not afraid of the quiet. He was not bracing himself for another sleepless night. Instead, he felt safe, held, ready. His breathing slowed naturally. His body grew heavy. His mind, instead of racing, simply settled, like dust settling after a storm, like water becoming still after being disturbed. Thoughts came, as thoughts do. Memories of the bazaar, images from his dream, fragments of conversations. But instead of grabbing onto them, instead of following them down their anxious pathways, he simply noticed them, acknowledged them, and let them pass. Like clouds, he thought, just like the merchant said, like clouds moving across the sky, and as he let them pass, the space between thoughts grew wider, quieter, more peaceful. He thought of his younger self, the one he had forgiven. He sent him a blessing. May you be at peace. May you know that you did your best. May you be free. He thought of his grandmother, her warm embrace, her gentle wisdom. Thank you, he whispered in his mind. Thank you for loving me, for teaching me, for waiting for me in my dreams. He thought of the woman under the lemon tree, the possibility of future love. When I'm ready, he promised her silently. When I'm ready, I will be brave. I will reach out. I will try again. He thought of the merchant, keeping his shop in the night bazaar, offering dreams to those who needed them. Thank you, Samir thought. Thank you for the space, for the time, for the dream, for showing me the way back to myself. And then, finally, he thought of himself. The present version, the rested version, the one he was becoming with each breath. You are enough, he told himself. You have always been enough. You are not broken. You are not damaged. You are simply human. Beautifully, imperfectly, completely human. And that is exactly what you are supposed to be. Rest now. You have earned it. Rest. His breathing grew slower still, deeper. The edges of consciousness began to blur and soften. He was falling, not falling in a frightening way, just gently descending, into warmth, into softness, into peace, into sleep, real sleep, deep sleep, the kind of sleep that heals, the kind of sleep that restores, the kind of sleep that he had been seeking for so long. And as he fell, he carried with him everything he had learned, everything he had released, everything he had forgiven. He carried the garden with the fountain, the rooftop at dawn, his grandmother's kitchen, the merchant's kind eyes, the empty bottle that now held everything. He carried it all with him, into sleep, into dreams, into rest, and in that rest he was whole. Epilogue, a gentle closing. Outside Samir's window, the sun rose fully over the city. Light spilled across the rooftops, golden and warm. The call to prayer echoed through the streets, beautiful and ancient. People emerged from their homes, ready for a new day. But Samir slept. He slept through the morning, through the sounds of the city waking up, through the sunlight moving across his floor, through the heat of midday. He slept the sleep of someone who had finally found what they had been looking for. And when he woke, hours later, mid-afternoon, with sunlight streaming through his window, he woke slowly, gently, naturally. He opened his eyes and blinked at the ceiling. For a moment he just lay there, taking stock. His body felt heavy and warm. His mind was clear and quiet. There was no panic, no anxiety, no immediate rush of thoughts, just presence. He sat up slowly and looked around his room. Everything was the same, and everything was different. He rose from bed and went to the courtyard. The bottle was still there on the table, catching the afternoon light. He picked it up and held it, and he could feel the warmth of it, the memory of the dream. It had happened. It had really happened. He wasn't sure if the night bazaar was still there, in the old quarter beyond the walls. He wasn't sure if the merchant's shop would be there if he went back. Maybe it was. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe it would appear again when someone else needed it. But that didn't matter. What mattered was that he had gone. He had been brave enough to walk into the night, to accept the dream, to do the work, and he had found his way back, not back to who he used to be, but forward, to who he was becoming. Samir went inside and made himself tea. He sat in his courtyard and drank it slowly, watching the light play across the lemon tree's leaves, and for the first time in a very long time, he felt content. Not happy in a wild, exuberant way, just content, at peace, here. That night, when the sun set and the city grew quiet, Samir felt the familiar pull of tiredness. But this time, it was not the exhausting, desperate tiredness of insomnia. It was just natural tiredness, the body's gentle signal that it was time to rest. He went to bed at a reasonable hour. He lay down, he closed his eyes, and he slept. Not perfectly. There were dreams, some strange, some mundane. He woke once in the night to use the bathroom, then returned to bed and fell asleep again easily. But he slept. And the next night, he slept again. And the night after that. Some nights were easier than others. Some nights the old thoughts tried to creep back in, and he had to consciously practice what he had learned. Breathing, letting the thoughts pass, returning to the feeling of the garden, the fountain, the peace. But each time he practiced, it got a little easier. Weeks passed, then months. Samir began to notice other changes, small ones. He smiled more easily. He engaged more with his friends. He took walks through the city at different times of day, not just restless late-night wanderings, but purposeful, present walks where he noticed beauty and felt gratitude. And one day, many months later, he was sitting in a cafe in the early evening. The air was warm, and the cafe doors were open to the street. He was reading a book, sipping coffee, content in his solitude, and a woman at the next table dropped her napkin. Samir reached down and picked it up, handing it to her with a smile. "Thank you," she said, smiling back. "You're welcome." And they started talking, just small talk at first, about the cafe, about the book he was reading, about the weather. But it was easy, natural, and Samir found himself laughing, genuinely laughing at something she said. When she had to leave, she paused and said, "I'm here most evenings. If you'd ever like to continue this conversation." And Samir, his heart beating fast but not with fear, just with anticipation, said, "I'd like that." She smiled. "Good." And she left. Samir sat there for a while longer, his book forgotten. He thought about the woman under the lemon tree in his dream, the possibility of future love, and he thought, maybe this is it. Maybe this is the beginning. Or maybe it wasn't. Maybe this woman would become a friend, or maybe nothing would come of it at all. But the point was, he had said yes. He had been open. He had allowed the possibility, and that was everything. That night, when Samir went home and lay in his bed, he held the empty bottle for a moment. He had kept it all this time, on the table in his courtyard, a reminder. He held it and whispered, "Thank you. Thank you to the merchant. Thank you to the dream. Thank you to himself for being brave enough to seek help, for being brave enough to do the work." And then he set the bottle aside, turned off the light, and closed his eyes. And he slept, peacefully, deeply, completely. And you, dear listener, you who have journeyed with Samir tonight, you too can rest now. You have heard his story. You have walked with him through the night bazaar. You have witnessed his dream. You have seen him forgive himself. You have seen him open to new possibilities. And perhaps there is something in his story that speaks to your own. Perhaps you too have been carrying a burden. Perhaps you too have been replaying the past. Perhaps you too have been standing outside your own life, too afraid to step in. If so, know this: you are not broken. You are not damaged. You are not beyond repair. You are simply human. Beautifully, imperfectly, completely human. And that is enough. That has always been enough. You can rest now. You can let go. You can allow yourself, just for tonight, just for this moment, to be at peace. Close your eyes if they are not already closed. Take a deep breath. And another. Feel your body heavy against the bed. Feel the softness of your pillow. Feel the weight of your blankets holding you gently. You are safe. You are held. You are exactly where you need to be. And like Samir, you can meet yourself with compassion. You can forgive yourself. You can open yourself to rest. Let your thoughts come and let them go, like clouds moving across the sky. You do not need to hold them. You do not need to follow them. Just watch them pass. And in the space between thoughts, in that quiet, open space, let yourself settle. Let yourself sink deeper into warmth, into softness, into peace, into sleep. You have done enough. You have carried enough. You have tried enough. Now, rest. Rest, dear listener. Rest. And know that when you wake, whether in a few hours or in the morning, you will carry something with you. Perhaps just a feeling. Perhaps just a whisper of peace. But you will carry it, and it will be enough.